Was it embarrassing for you along the way, or what has that been like?
Oh, the whole thing has just been so humbling. I said, "Estás buena," and Issa told me, "You just told her she's hot." I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And I didn't say anything to the child, and she just didn't say anything to me. And I'm like, what did she think? Like, yeah, I'm saying you're hot to this little elementary school child. I asked Isabel's teacher a couple years ago, like, how many.
What's happening?
How are you?
I'm okay.
Here we go again, unmasked and messy.
Welcome back.
The journey through life's messiness. So today we're going to be talking about doing life in another language that is not your native language. So we live here in Madrid, 11 years. Did you speak Spanish before we came here?
I did. I spoke with my family growing up, I think from a baby to maybe 5 years, 6 years old, 7 years old. I was really exposed and spoke Spanish, but, going to school in the U.S., I think a lot of it came from being around my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a lot of time spent with them when I was younger, and that kind of changed getting older, maybe staying alone, not being with supervised, being supervised all the time. So yeah, I got to learn for a season and then stopped learning.
So in your home with your mom, you would speak Spanish sometimes, or it was always English?
No, I think with my mom it was always English.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was more with maybe my dad. I don't remember too much with my dad, but my grandparents probably.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I spoke nothing of Spanish. I think in 6th grade we had this special Spanish course, but it was like they bring in, like, in school, did you guys have the TV that was on, like, wheels that was high? So they'd bring in the TV, and we had to pick, like, a name, and that's kind of all I remember. And then in 9th grade, you need to take Spanish or French. I wanted to take Spanish, but the class was full. So I had to take French, and so I ended up taking 4 years of French from 9th to 12th. Didn't learn anything. It was like, the first 2 years, I didn't like it because you like had to do stuff. And then the second 2 years, we had an easy teacher. It was like free class. She was like our friend. Didn't learn anything. Nothing.
She wasn't concerned about
No.
being a good educator and...
No. But I love the class because I didn't have to do anything. So here's like 4 years, but I've learned more going through French with our kids because they've had to learn it and they've had to have the class. So I've learned a lot more with them. But now that we're here in Spain, it's like, well, what was that about? Why 4 years of French, Lord, if you knew what my future was going to be? But after we got married, I mean, you guys really didn't speak Spanish that much, but there were times when we would get together as a family. And normally it would be Judy and Frankie. They would come out like, oh, this happened, and they'd say it in Spanish, or like a joke in Spanish. And you guys would be laughing, and I was clueless. And I thought, I wish I could speak Spanish. I want to be a part. And then I think one Christmas, your mom got me and a couple other like girls that weren't part of the family yet, something to do with learning how to speak Spanish. And I was so excited. I never did it.
I mean, it's hard unless you're forced to.
Exactly.
Or unless you're just super determined or super talented and you just absorb it. It takes time and effort to learn.
Yeah.
I do have a story about, not necessarily a story, but kind of a season of life where I did take Spanish class in high school, and I thought, oh yeah, this will be easy. And by that time, you're trying to do as least as possible and getting by. And I think my teacher was from Spain. I'm pretty sure she was. But I'm convinced the woman hated me. The class was easy. But I think I had this girl that we were always talking, so maybe I just irritated her. But the woman just did not like me. But I did enjoy the class, more or less, and it was an easy A.
It was easy?
Yeah. It was,
was it Spanish? Do you remember?
Yes.
Was it Mexican?
It was Spain.
Really?
I believe so.
So did she teach you how to speak with a lisp and stuff?
I don't remember that. I just remember.
You just remember talking to your friend? And she didn't like you. She probably did like you. It was just cultural,
I don't know.
That's funny. So when we came out here, so would you say your vocabulary was just up to a certain extent?
Yeah, it was so limited, and you realize, because you're thinking in your own language, and you want to articulate and talk and describe or ask questions, and you realize how much you lack. But the Spanish language with verbs and past tense, present tense, future tense,
conjugation,
it is just so tough and so much more complex than English is. So yeah, you realize really quick. Yeah, I realized really quick I wasn't saying a lot of things correctly.
Because you would have to figure out rent. We had to find a place once we moved to the mainland. You had to talk to Spanish people in Spanish, rent, contracts, banking, telephone, electricity, all of these things that I'm sure as a kindergartner, you never had to speak those words.
I'm pretty sure I wasn't filing a visa application when I was 5 years old.
Well, that's crazy. And we did know that we were going to come to Madrid, to Spain, for a handful of years before we did. But like you said, unless you're really put in a situation, either you have this internal motivation that you're going to learn a language and you're gifted to do it, or it's you almost have to be put in a situation to where you have to learn it.
You have no other choice. You have no other choice.
Yes. And so that's kind of what happened to me, because I wanted to learn Spanish before we came, but we had 3 little kids, mama brain, all that stuff, and we were just on this big ride and did not learn anything until the second year that we were here, because the first year we were on an island and we were around English speakers the whole time.
Being in Mallorca, you're around English speakers, the church we were at, and
everything was English.
Yeah, we did speak with certain people or do certain things. Go to the grocery store, there was some English or Spanish. We're going to IKEA. The lady talking about how the people from the island don't like all the outsiders. That
Yeah, but I probably didn't understand that conversation, so I don't even remember that. I remember the one saying I do remember learning was "hasta luego," which is "see you later." But it's they don't even say it fully, so I would try to say it like they did, and then at one point someone's like, "No, that's not how you say it." It's okay, I'll stick to a foreigner's way to say "hasta luego."
Well, yeah, they're going to speak differently here even than they would in Mallorca.
Exactly.
They have their own language and their own also accent or the way they speak.
Yeah. So when we moved to the community in Madrid, we were still outside for a little bit. That's when I had to learn Spanish. I was put in a situation to where there was no other. It's not really like even living in the city where you will find some people who speak English. People didn't speak English for the most part. And so if I wanted to speak, I had to learn. And I wanted to. I wanted to learn Spanish, but we made friends, our neighbors, who were completely Spanish, knew nothing of English, and they became family to us.
Yeah, they're really cool people. And I think, at least the husband, Ruben, he wanted to learn English. So I
Yeah.
think he had a desire too, but the same struggle. Now that,
Because he didn't have to.
yeah, he didn't have to. So, but I remember having meals with them, whether
Yeah.
lunch or dinner. And before you're like, how are we going to do this? And it's just like, okay, here we go.
Well, you had to translate everything because I knew nothing. But you think, why would they want to be our friends? Especially my friend, because they couldn't communicate with me without you. But they were so kind. I think God's grace was just over our lives and allowing us to be so, so close to them. She is an amazing cook. And so she would want to show me how to cook these Spanish meals, but I didn't speak Spanish, so you weren't there. So I remember one time she had me over to fix tortilla de patata, and she's like telling me all this stuff, and I'm saying, sí. And one time she looked at me, I had no clue what she was saying, but she's like doing it, so I can kind of tell. And she looked at me, she's like, no, sí. I'm like, okay. But it's like you feel like this, like you're pretending, because you are kind of pretending like you're understanding, but you're not understanding anything, and context. I think the process of learning Spanish is you go from knowing nothing to little by little you can understand the context of what people are saying. The details in the context, no. But you start to pick up little words little by little, and it has been a very long process for me.
And I think you've come a long way. I remember when you were really determined when we first moved to the city or that suburb. You started taking classes and reading through a book or, like a workbook and...
Or doing homework with the kids.
Yeah, and I remember, you were teaching me things and you were learning grammar, proper things that I never studied at all. It was just conversational things that I learned. And so, you'd give me little bits and pieces here that have helped me along the way. But, man, you didn't speak anything in
Nothing.
And we threw our kids into school, into public
poor
school.
things.
They didn't speak a lick of Spanish.
Our eldest was in second grade, and then Bristol was 3. Samuel was 5.
There was a short little period of time where she knew enough Spanish, so did I, and, we could speak in Spanish and keep a conversation private from the kids.
But that lasted, 2 weeks or something, but the kids did great. They did amazing learning Spanish. They didn't really complain, huh?
I don't recall.
Which is cool.
Was it embarrassing for you along the way, or what has that been like?
The whole thing has just been so humbling. Before you learn a language, I think that you think you're going to sound like those people once you learn it. You know what I mean? And then once you start learning, you realize you're always going to sound like an outsider. No matter how good your grammar gets, how fast you can talk, how fluent you are. But they are gifted people, so I don't want to, talk about them. But for a normal person, we are always going to probably sound like an outsider. And so I could go into a store in the center of Madrid where there's a lot of, visitors, and I can say hola, and they would speak to me in English. It's like just by saying hola to them, they know. I don't know if it's my look, my accent, or what it is. And that can be a little frustrating because it's like I've been here for more than a decade, but that's never going to go away. Think about your grandparents, Ingi and Ron. Ingi more, no, your Oma. She always had an accent, but totally fluent in English. But that German accent was strong.
So what does it take then to learn another language? And maybe that would look different too if you were studying in university or high school or whatever. But when you move to another country, what does it take to learn another language?
Yeah. Like you said, be in situations where you do not have an option to speak your own language. Because you always, for the most part, will gravitate to people like you who speak your own language, even if you're living in your own country. So to be put in a situation where you are with people who cannot speak English, like none, and so it forces you to speak that language, to learn it, to try to comprehend what they're saying. And I think it's different because what we do here is, I'm not in a store, let's say, or I'm not in an office 8-10 hours a day with only Spanish speaking. Most of what we do is in Spanish, the ministries that we do, and it's lots of hours, but it's not constant hours in one day in only a Spanish speaking environment. So I think it's probably been a lot slower for me. Plus I'm a mom, and I just think moms, for the most part, we do not have so much space in our mind to just pick it up like other people, you know. But I think for me personally, it's always going to be learning, always. I think I'm good, and then I'll listen to a voice message I left, and it's like, oh, I thought I was speaking fast, and it's so slow. How do people just listen to me? Or phrases, you know. I've said so many embarrassing things, and the ones that I know about is because my kids have told me. Imagine everything I've said. Like, we had a VBS here. A group had come from West Virginia, and we had a VBS. The first time we had, like, Spanish kids in our church, and we were, like, you know, serving them. And I don't remember which kid it was, but I think it was a Spanish kid. And we were doing this sport. And I'm like, what did I say? I said, "Estás buena." And Isa told me, "You just told her she's hot." I'm like, oh my gosh. And I didn't say anything to the child, and she just didn't say anything to me. And I'm like, what did she think? Like, yeah, I'm saying you're hot to this little elementary school child. I asked Isabel's teacher a couple years ago, like, how many buttholes he had, because I said, "¿Cuántos años tienes?" instead of años, because that's a whole different. And of course they tell me when he left. So I think there's always going to be those constant learning experiences that you will learn the right phrase because you do something wrong, because you say it wrong.
And then there's the people that will actually tell you, oh, this is how you say it, or you shouldn't say this. And for me, that's been few and far in between. I don't know if it's been different for you, but for me, it's always been very few.
People correcting you?
Yeah. But you appreciate it, especially when it's something that you've said constantly, like something that's very common that you say. I guess I would describe it as what it takes is, humility is one way to say it, but really, you have to be okay with making yourself look like a fool.
Totally.
You know, and you have to be okay and just be comfortable with that. Understand that, you know, you are going to say things that are not right, but you keep on trying, and you don't retreat from conversations and situations. And especially for us, because, you know, our life is around people, having come to plant an evangelical church. And it's in Spanish. Everything we've done in Spanish. So even like for me, preaching or teaching in Spanish, it has been hard. But there are things that I don't have right that I say probably all the time, you know?
So would you like people to come and say, hey, you say this, but that's not right? Or is that a little too, but your face says it all?
No, I think... depending on the moment, maybe how, and then the moment. Because sometimes, you know, stress is like at its peak level, and so anything just thrown on top of you is gonna, you know, bring the fire out in you. But I think I would, because some of the things that people have said to me have been very constructive.
Helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that is like a whole nother level. Ministering in a whole different language, because here you're teaching classes, discipling, teaching on Sunday mornings, a recorded live stream every single Sunday, having meetings, all of these things with other leaders here in the city, and it's all in a language that's not yours. And so it can be super intimidating, but then put on the spiritual aspect of, I think for me, for many years, not so much now, but women would come to me, you know, with all of their things. And in English, I would have had a million things I could have shared with them. But because it was in Spanish, I couldn't say much. It's like what I had in my heart to encourage them, I couldn't say. But even in that, I think God used that time because those women probably just needed to be listened to. And if it was in my own language, I would have spoken more than I listened, you know? But the hardest thing in what we do here has been praying in Spanish. Because when you're in a group, or even when you're praying over someone, you don't want to be a distraction, first of all. It's like you want to be focused on the Lord, and there's a part of me that almost feels like fake because it's not in my own language, you know, because I have to think a little bit about how you say it in Spanish. It's not just flowing from my heart. There's like this filter. It's coming from my heart to how do I say this in Spanish and then to the Lord.
Yeah.
And it is tough. I remember so long I did not want to pray with women. I was like, I'll pray for you, but I wouldn't pray with them. And then there was just a point like, you have to do it. Just do it. And it would be simple prayers.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you do it, the more comfortable you feel, even though it's not perfect. And I think God's given us a lot of grace. People know us, they love us, and they give us a lot of grace.
Yeah.
In our language skills, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, one of the hardest things too is because I've struggled just being very tired a lot, not feeling well, anxiety. It gets me tired.
Yes.
You know, I realized like when we're going to the gym and we're eating like healthier and stuff like that, there is more stamina both physically and mentally.
Wow.
And those times have been a little bit easier, but for the most part, I mean, for 10, 11 years, it's been just very, very draining at times. You know, you're tired, or you do, you're tired, you've had a long week, and then you have to show up for church, and you just feel like you don't have it in you, you know, or you've had a really long day, and it's like, I just cannot think or say one more thing in Spanish.
Yeah. Or people want to hang out, no? And to them, it's like relaxed. Like we're just hanging out as friends, buddies. But for us, it's not necessarily like that because our brains can't rest. It's not just chill.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a very physical, taxing aspect to it. And like you said, God has given us grace, I think. People can step up and people can go beyond their ability. You know, I think that God has built within us to be able to break past some of the limits that we've had in our lives. And I'm thankful for that. And maybe that would be an encouragement to anybody else, whether it's in language or something that you're facing that you think, I can't do this. Even at 30, 40 years old or older, I think that God can give you or has put in you an ability to work hard and to overcome your weaknesses and boundaries. But I would say what you said about God giving us grace is the key factor for us in surviving this long. Is that God has given us a special grace to continue because He has called us here. He brought us here. And so here we are. And our kids speak better than we do.
They speak like Spaniards.
Yes, madrileños, we would say.
Exactly. And after years of, what we've come to do and doing it in Spanish, I think also in church life, me leading worship for so long, only being me and Isa for so long.
That's
now
amazing.
It's much different. And so being so, those aren't necessarily my giftings, like languages. I've never been able to be someone who can speak in a different accent, like, oh, I'm going to be British right now. Like, our kids are wonderful at that. I am not. And so just, speaking another language, doing worship and in another language also. But I think through the years, I have just realized that God wants the glory, because he could have called anyone here to Madrid. There was nothing so special about you and me. I think probably the opposite. Why wouldn't he bring someone, I'm talking about myself, that is fluent in Spanish, that, already knew it or can learn it better or is a better worship leader or whatever? But he didn't. He called us with the strengths and the weaknesses that we have, with the backgrounds, the history that we have. And I'm convinced for him to get the glory.
Yeah.
And in our weakness, his strength is made perfect. And I think he enjoys that.
He uses the foolish things.
He does. But I also think he uses it in the church because we have a heart to see leaders raised in the church, disciples being made and then sent out and planting other churches and going to be missionaries, going to their home countries and preaching the gospel. And so I think there is a sense of, in our church, if they can do this, I should give it a try, There was this prayer meeting not too long ago, and there's just some days, I don't know if you feel like there's some days that you can just speak easily, and other days, I don't know why, but nothing comes out right, It's just tripping over all my words. And so I had started prayer before service on Sunday, and it was just one of those times everything was just a mess, but whatever. And you have those times and you can't think too much about it or else you'll get really down. And then other people prayed. And then there was this new guy who he's been coming, not a Christian yet. And he announced before, he's like, well, I've never done this in public, but I'm going to go ahead and pray. And I just had this thought, what if me struggling so much to pray allowed him to realize, okay, let's just do this, gave him freedom to, well, I could do what she did, And so God uses all of it, I think.
Yeah.
I'm a little convinced about.
That's funny. It makes me think of that. Both of those things you just said make me think about how, I don't know if we had gone to the States or whatever, and you were going to drive one time, and the kids were like...
No, this was in France.
That was in France?
It was in France.
Okay. And the kids are like, Mom's going to drive? All of a sudden, they're thinking about it in Bristol, our youngest goes, she goes, well, can I try? If Mom can do it, surely I can.
Yes, exactly, because my kids don't know me as the driver here, because I don't have my Spanish license. I hope that changes. Oh, gosh. Exactly.
Can I try?
So God just uses my life to free other people up to believe that just maybe they could do it, including, she was, 9 at the time?
10 years old, 9, 10.
Well, Mom's and she was dead serious. It's not like because she's a jokester, she wasn't joking. She's like, if Mom can try, I can too. She probably could have done it, though. But, well, we can wrap this up, but a couple years ago, in the summer, I was reading in Exodus about Moses. And, when God called Moses to go and free his people from Egypt, what was the thing that what was one of the reasons why Moses was like, not me, not me?
The way you talked.
Yeah. He said, but Moses pleaded with the Lord, "Oh Lord, I'm not very good with words. I never have been, and I'm not now, even though you have spoken to me. I get tongue-tied, and my words get tangled." Then the Lord asked Moses, listen to this. Who makes a person's mouth? Who decides whether people speak or do not speak? Hear or do not hear? See or do not see? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will be with you as you speak, and I will instruct you in what to say. And like I said, God could have called anyone, absolutely anyone, to come, but he called us. And then later, so that really struck me, and then in Acts, I read, it's Acts 7:22, Moses was taught in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, because he grew up as an Egyptian.
Yeah.
and he was powerful in both speech and action. So it's like, well, he's saying he gets tongue-tied and all this, but then in Acts it says he grew up and he was strong in speech. But when God was calling him, he was calling him to deliver the Israelites, and they spoke Hebrew.
Yeah.
And so it struck me, what if he's saying, I can't speak Hebrew very well, I'm terrible. And God's like, but I'm calling you, the one who grew up in a whole different culture, a whole different language, to go and speak to them and deliver them. I want to use you. And that was encouraging for me, because he could choose anyone, and yet he's called us. And he's the one who makes our mouths speak the way they do or not. And I found so much comfort in that. And I think that goes for everything in our lives, whether it's speaking a different language, or if someone in church has asked you to serve in an area that you don't feel like is your strong point, or going out and speaking to people, being friendly to people, helping, serving. If God's calling you to do it, doesn't matter what gifts you have or not.
Yeah.
He wants to use you.
I'll never forget what a friend of ours, a pastor, who was also a missionary in Europe for a long time, he's back in the States. He said these very wise words, very comforting, uplifting words. He said, God has better people, but he chose you.
And we laughed, didn't we?
Yeah, but it was, I think, true and freeing, and we could receive that. And that's the reality, is there's weaknesses that we have. You can't hide those weaknesses, and there's some ways that you can pretend, and there's other ways there's no pretending.
Yeah.
And I think God takes those things, and doesn't allow us to hide behind anything. And really that comes back to the gospel. It's that, where we want to be accepted, we want to be liked, we want to be looked upon well. We want people to think, good job in everything, right? We don't want to feel like losers or incapable or like we're failing at all. And yet in those things, everything in us is exposed.
Yeah.
And we have to come back to Jesus and the gospel, that we're accepted in him. And we are very human, but we are also, we have this spiritual aspect to us, this component that's very real. And the gospel is the greatest story, and means the most, and is the most powerful in our lives.
Yeah.
Because of who Jesus is.
Absolutely.
And the fact that he made us righteous when we put our faith in him, that he accepts us, receives us, that he adopts us as sons. And while we look for these things in so many other areas of life, I think we can fall flat on our face and just trust him, or be willing to, because we are accepted in him. And that has to be not just good enough, but what I long for, what I understand, and what I cling to and rely upon.
That's a good word. And I think it's a good word to end on. Yeah. I thank you, Lord, for accepting us, and that we don't have to perform.
Yeah. Well, until the next time, this is Messy and Unmasked.
Unmasked and messy.
Unmasked and Messy.
You did that on purpose.
No, I didn't, honestly.
I'm
thinking in Spanish, English. See you next time. Adios.